This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neiman.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neiman here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Got another great guest per usual. This guest I've met recently at a conference in Atlanta and look forward to hearing more of his story. I've met him and talked to him about a few times, but for the rest of you, please help me welcome my guest, Tim Woodbridge. Tim, thanks for coming on, man.
Ferd, thank you so much, man. It was so great to meet you. I've been, listening to your podcast for a while. So it was like meeting rock stars that I've been following at Seco, It was a good time.
Well, I don't know that I would consider myself a rock star. I don't even listen to rock music, and I'm not really a star. But thank you. In my little bubble of the mobile home park world, it is nice to meet people who appreciate the content. And today you're part of that content. So excited to hear your story. I've heard it obviously offline, but for those that haven't, why don't you give us your background and how you got into MH?
Oh, sure. So I was a nurse for a while, and, I went into nursing because it's safe and because it's you'd always have a job is what everyone told me. And I did. And I was always wanting like more, I remember being in school and being like, oh, I can't wait till I graduate and then everything's going to be good. And then it happened and I was like, oh, this isn't everything that I wanted. So like so many real estate investors, I stumbled upon Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, I wasn't raised financially smart, but I read it and maybe 6 years ago, and asset liability, these are new terms to me at the time. And so I was like, oh, okay, so this is how people do it. And from there, I read a lot. And so I looked at a ton of different things, a lot, and, got into Bigger Pockets, listening to a lot of that and figuring out like, okay, I know I want to do real estate. I don't know exactly what I want to do. And that led me to listening to Frank Rolfe, the OG Frank Rolfe on the Bigger Pockets podcast. And he's like, I love it. I love it because, your expense ratio is low. Your tenants usually own their own home, that your tenants are sticky and it's like a win-win. It's, one of the last, or if not the last, non-subsidized affordable housing out there. And so, and plus it was a little bit weird. It was different. It was off the beaten path. Everyone was doing wholesaling or flipping or, whatever, single family rentals, apartment rentals, all that. And this was a little bit different. And it grabbed me. So I did a deep dive into it and, learned everything I could, but more took action than anything. Like Frank said, check out Mobile Home Park Store because his partner, it's his partner's website. And so I did, looked all around Charleston, South Carolina, where I'm living. And, I found one. And I mean, I just took action. I didn't know everything and I still don't know everything, but I know the direction I want to go.
No, that's great, man. No, there used to be I can't remember who said the quote, but I heard it may have been Rudolph Giuliani when I heard him speak, but he said, you can have results or you can have excuses, but you can't have both. And you got to take action. And a lot of people, it doesn't do any good. I have one friend in particular who's he's brilliant and he knows everything. And he's read every finance book ever made, but he doesn't take any action. So he's still broke. He's smarter than 99.9% of the population, except he hasn't taken the action. So you're making the great bet on yourself and great action. Obviously, entrepreneurs. That's cool. What are you reading now, or what are some of the books that have I'm a big reader myself, so I'm curious, what books have you read that are especially valuable?
So I mean, the latest that was really good was 10x is 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah.
By Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. I mean, their body of work, their who not how, like all that stuff is amazing. And I love the 10x is easier than 2x. Mostly it's, I think of 2x and I'm like, So I was on a podcast last year, I think, and they said, what's the next year look for you? Are you, going to double what you're doing? And I'm like, I don't want to double what I'm doing because that's too much work. Like I'll be too busy. It'll kill me. And I said, I don't know what it looks like exactly, but I know that I want to work less. And so reading their book, it's like, figure out the things that move the needle and, figure out systems to 10x it. You can't work your way into 10x. You can't like 10x your workload because it's
Right.
it's not possible. And so I love stuff like that, like simplify your life and get more done by doing less. That's me for the last 6 months, and it's really working.
No, that's great. That's inspiring. I've read Who Not How. I've not read the 10X Potatoes. I'm familiar with it. I got about 30 books in my queue. I'd say in front of it, but not that I've even ranked them all in order. But yeah, I mean that's obviously some wise nuggets there. I mean, I've really been myself the last 6+ months focusing on written processes, systems, and then also the people that are going to help build those. Because I told my CFO one day, or more than once, but there are lots of guys out there that have twice as many parks or twice as many sites and twice as much net worth as me. And obviously some guys 10x and 100x of that. But I'm like, I know none of those guys are 10 times smarter than me. And I really know none of those guys work 10 times harder than me, because there's just not enough hours in the day or week to do that. So they're doing something different than me, and maybe they're just luckier, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're doing something that is a hack. And the Who Not How and the 10X and the systems is, they're not 10 times smarter than me, but they have 10 people who are 90% as smart as me. Okay, well now they're really moving the needle, right? Or so on. So yeah, that's good stuff for sure. Well, tell me some of your acquisitions and some of your operations. What are what's your style, or what's your type of preferred property, and what are some lessons you've learned along the way on it?
So
It's been about 2 years since you've been in the game.
4 years,
4 years now.
almost
Okay.
4 years since I closed my first park. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
But I mean, so I closed my first park and then nothing more. And then 2 years after the first park, I got the second. A year later, I got the third. And then this year I've closed 6, about to close a 7th and hopefully an 8th by the end of the year.
Nice.
So I like creative deal structure, and like it just gets me excited. I like, that's part of my personal values. One of my 5 core values is creativity. So, yeah, I mean, it really gets me excited when it's like, okay, how can we create this good win-win? I'm not good at like back and forth and like me versus you. I'm really good at me and you versus the problem of how you can sell this deal to me. So that's, over the past few years, I've really been like, oh, they want this price. That's crazy. I would never pay that. And like, I grumbled to myself, and, I put an offer out and it's rejected because it's low, because, again, it's me versus them. This year, I'm like, okay, well, how can I get them their price? Like, interest rates are where they are, whatever, but at the end of the day, it's all, what's my net operating income minus what's all my debt service. And I include in my debt service like pref to investors too. So I want to make sure everything's taken care of, and I'm controlling, managing the downside and letting the upside take care of itself. So yeah, it's just, I know the asset, I know how to run it. And it's like, okay, like I know how this is probably going to be. I know the potential upside, but also I'm not going to negative cash flow ever, because I really like sleeping well at night. And that first park I had, oh my gosh, like many nights I woke up in the middle of the night, like I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And, I was a nurse, so it's not like I didn't make good money, but it's not like I was rich. And, there was a lot of things putting on my personal credit card and I don't know how I'm gonna, set up these homes and blah blah blah. But like, okay, I know what I don't want. I know how I don't want to be. So let's figure out how I can, make this a win-win for me and the seller, um, where I'm not losing any sleep.
That's a good strategy. I mean, yeah, kind of you somewhere in there you referenced, you know what you don't want to do or know what you don't want. I think that's important. I was just telling somebody yesterday, um, it's the deal that you don't do that makes your career, not the deal that you missed. So it's like, or even the ones you do often times, it's just, if you buy one bad deal, it could really crush you. And if you got, and not just crush you completely, but um, I know, for example, parks with small lots are problematic because it's hard to infill. And if the homes eventually burn down or die, then you're not going to fill it back up. So some of those parks, and smaller homes, you get smaller, lower quality houses typically, and then they're less expensive. So then you get often lower quality residents. Well, then it's hard to turn the park around. And because you have a lower quality park, you're going to have a harder time increasing rents and or selling the park at some point to an end buyer at an attractive cap rate. So it's like, okay, just one little variable, small lots, makes me a little more concerned than a lot of people. So I've learned that, and we've all learned, I got a lot of park owned homes. I don't love them, but they're part of the game. In an ideal world, I'd have zero, but that's not realistic for me. So especially if I do infill, so I have lots of park owned homes. Now where I can make some decisions as on the front end is I had a park recently, somebody tried to bring to me, is like 120 sites, like 118 park owned homes from 1970. Like, oh man, it sounds like a nightmare. And the amount of capital and manpower to fix all those is going to be more than I wanted to tackle. So I kind of learned what I don't want, and make decisions accordingly.
And those 1970s homes makes it difficult. I mean, like, sure, you can rent to own or lease with an option or whatever to the tenants, but yeah, I don't know, I probably wouldn't look at that deal, because of how much of a headache it would be. Like, sure, it's like, I talk to some people and they'll be like, oh, like this asset class or this asset class or whatever, like you're going to make a ton of money. And I'm like, bro, I don't need to make a ton of money. I need to live well. I need to enjoy my life. I need to not be stressed, because I don't care. I don't want to be the, what is it? The Steve Jobs or the whoever who's making billions of dollars, but like who sleeps 4 hours a night. And it's like, that's not the lifestyle I want. I want to live comfortably. I want to be happy. I want to have time for everything in my life. And like, work is just one part of my life. Work, what is it? They say, you have all these balls to juggle. You got family, your values, your whatever, your relationships, your health, and work. And work is the only thing that's rubber. Everything else is glass. So, I might be a little bit slower than other people, and I might be a little bit less rich than other people, but I'm going to be happy for what I want.
No, that's yeah, I've heard that same analogy. That's good stuff. I mean, just recognize what you want and how you're going to get there, and turning down a certain deal, it could be part of it. I mean, I've turned down deals where I could make money, and it's kind of crazy, but yeah, you finally learn to say, like, I don't need it or want it that bad. I did at one point,
Yeah.
but I don't need it as bad as I did then. I mean, I remember the first time I sold ancillary ground off one of my parks, it was like $17,000, and it was my first park, and I'm like, this is a life-changing amount of money, $17,000. And then the bank said, and we'll take that. And I was like, what do you mean? This isn't the park. This is the 2 acres next to the park. It's a separate real estate parcel. They're like, yeah, but you bought it together and it's part of the collateral on the loan. And I was just like, yeah, but the loan was based on the income of the park. And they go, but that was collateral. So I learned the hard way what a release price is. So I was just telling somebody this story yesterday. I mean, so the lesson learned is I now tell the park, hey, I don't want, or tell the bank, I don't want any lien on the ancillary ground. So instruct the appraiser, who's very impressionable, instruct the appraiser just to value the income from the parcel number one. And what do you know? The appraisal almost always hits the number plus 1-2%. So just enough to make the loan go through. Even if you're buying the deal at 60 cents on the dollar, you don't get the dollar, you get the 61 cents on the appraisal, is how it seems to work, because appraisers are cheap and they don't want to put their neck out there. But anyway, that works out really well. That now I have no release price on the land, and then if park-owned homes are not a huge portion of the deal, you can have no release price on the park-owned homes, and then you get a nice windfall. I just had one sell the other day, and like, hey, here's a check for 30 grand. I was like, what's that for? Oh, we sold a home. Oh, that one didn't have a line of credit. That one didn't have a guidance loan. This one was a debt free. And why is it debt free? It's not because we bought it cash. It's because it came with the park, but it was not part of the collateral. So it was equivalent of, extra materials. And then we eventually sold it, windfall of cash. So, there's a little lesson learned in there, I guess, but I know what I don't like, and it's the bank taking my sales proceeds and prepaying principal for faster than I prefer. So
so on I had a similar thing where on my first park, which I still have my first park. I love it. It's doing really well. But yeah, it's all individually deeded parcels, but we're running it as a mobile home park. So it's all these 1/4 acre lots. And I sold one to a guy who was, living in the park, who had bought other ones in the past. And I was like, oh man, we're selling it for 16 or 17,000. I don't remember, something like that. But I was like, this is going to be a nice cushion for our operating account, and we'll take a little bit. Ha ha ha. That's amazing. And then, the closing attorney is like, what's the bank say? And I was like, what do you mean? What's the bank say? And he's like, well, you got to get a release. And I was like, oh, okay. And so, my bubble was popped pretty quickly, but it's like, whatever, like, okay, emailed the bank, and I was like, hey, we're getting this much. And he's like, give us $10,000 towards your loan and you can keep the 7. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, I remember, so I bought the first park, and it was super, super tight, super something I would not get into again, but man, it did me a lot of good, because I learned a ton. I learned a lot about bringing homes in and whatnot, but we refied, and I was like counting the dollars. I was like, oh, they're totally going to give us 70% like of the current value, and like the value more than doubled from what we paid for it, right? So I was like, oh, we're going to get so much money. This is going to be amazing. Maybe we'll go buy another park with this. Ha 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 ha. And then, I talked to the bank, and he's like, oh yeah, we'll give you like 50% LTV. And sure, I could have talked to other banks and whatnot, but they already knew the park. And I was like, I don't need the money. It was just me thinking I was going to be rich, because at that time that would have been rich. But I was like, okay, you know what? How about we keep the low LTV and just have more cash flow. So
yeah, I got a story I'll share that's a good tip for our listeners on similar, where I had tried to refinance at my bank several times on a couple of parks, and they said, we don't do cash out refinances. We don't like it. We want you to skin the game. Like, oh, come on. And at the time I didn't have another banking relationship. But then I did later on. So I went to the banker and I said, hey, I got this park, the park, you got the loan on it, I bought it for $1 million. I owe 700. It's probably worth 2 million. I like the park. I'm thinking about selling it. They're like, oh, really? You're going to sell it for it's a good deal. It's a good park. I know. They go, we like having your $700,000 loan. You're always making your payments. And well, if you got to sell it, sell it. Well, here's why I'm calling. I got this guy. His name's Tim. Tim's thinking about buying it from me for 2 million. He thinks it's fair, and it'll appraise at 2 million. But Tim doesn't have a loan lined up. Would you guys want to make the loan? I know you guys are going to lose my loan, but you might as well sell to Tim. It's actually a bigger amount. You guys are in the business of lending money. Tim's trying to borrow money. What do you say? Will you make Tim a loan? Oh, yeah. We'll probably make Tim a loan. Like, like $1.5 million? Yeah. 75% LTV. We'll do that in a minute. I go, now Tim's not as strong as me financially. This is his first park, not as good an operator. No, it's a good asset, and we believe in it, and we'll lend to Tim. Okay. So you're going to give Tim $1.5 million, even though he has less experience than me, even though he doesn't know the asset like I do, and it's his first park and he has less net worth. Yeah. Okay, great. I said, thank you. I'll let Tim know. And I call back the next day. Hey, the deal with Tim fell through, but I'd like to do a cash out refinance. I'll take that $1.5 million loan. And you go, no, you can't do that for you. It's a refinance. We only do 50% refinance. I said, so wait a second. I've been with you guys for years, and you're going to give an inferior borrower a better deal than me? I guess I should go take it to the other banks in town. Maybe they'll refinance and get the new business. And he goes, let me get back to you on it. So long story short, it eventually worked. And that's how I did it. I set it up like that, and I got the refinance loan that I needed. And I put $500,000 or more than that, actually, but about $500,000 in my pocket. And so on. And then another way you can pull it off too is the bank. Sometimes you got to go through committee, or typically you got to go through committee for a refinance, but you can do what's called a change in terms, and you keep the same loan in place. You just modify the principal amount, or you modify the interest rate, but you keep the loan in place. So if it's a 5-year loan, you may have already burned off 18 months. So that's not ideal, but you can get approvals sometimes, because the vice president has discretion on a change in terms, whereas they don't on a new loan that has to go through committee.
That's good, man. I'll have to remember that.
It's worked for me a couple times. So, all right, good stuff. So what else do you want to share, Tim, particularly part of your journey? What's something you particularly like or don't like about parks, or some sort of tip you'd like to share?
Oh man. So tip I'd like to share. So it kind of piggybacks off of what we were saying. For everyone who's like, oh, I'm going to spreadsheet this to death. It's like, you got to take action, because I was spreadsheeting that refi to death, and then it came back at 50%. And so like numbers can look amazing in a spreadsheet. They could look awful in a spreadsheet, but until you take action, it's not real. It's just you playing fantasy. So like, take action, put that LOI out, talk to a lender, see what it's going to realistically be, and, formulate things as you're going, like, don't let, because something looks awful, don't let that stop you from putting an offer in. And an offer that makes sense to you, sure, someone wants 3 million, but what makes sense to me, because of interest rates and because of the investor capital I need to raise, it only works for me at 1.25. Sure, that's a super low offer, but I got a reason to I'm not just trying to be a jerk. I'll talk to the broker, I'll talk to the seller. This is my reason, if hopefully, and again, it's me getting on the same side with them. Hopefully I'm wrong in my numbers, and they can be like, well, actually, this is what it would be, or this is what it'd be. And I'd be like, oh, dude, sweet. I can actually pay you your price because I was wrong. I don't know about that wrong, but it's take that action, because everything else is fantasy up until then. Let's see what other questions.
Let me, I got a couple comments on, let me jump on that. Cause, what I do sometimes with brokers, in particular or sellers, is tell me where I'm wrong. So I'm going to give you some assumptions. I'm assuming that the rent that's 300 can only be increased to 330 reasonably next year. So I'm not assuming 400. Okay. I'm assuming I can only infill one home a month and probably none for 3 months in the winter. So I'm only going to infill 9 homes. So, tell me where I'm wrong. And then they'll be like, well, okay. So based on that, that's way different than your OM that acts like I can take rent to 400 and I can just fill the 12 lots immediately on day one. By the way, I couldn't even do it in year one, perhaps. And, this market can't support new homes. So I got to do used homes. I got to source those. Your guy didn't bring any new homes in. He had specifically said he always likes the 90s models because it fits his customer, blah, blah, blah. And then you basically get them to affirm your assumptions. But then for yourself, you really got, I love your comment about Excel, because you probably heard me say this, but there's more fiction is written in Excel than Word. And the reality is people have these rosy assumptions. And another thing that I like to say about Excel is, in the history of Microsoft Excel, no business plan ever ended in bankruptcy. Right? Everybody puts in their assumption. It always ends up with some level return that they accept, and it never says bankruptcy, right? It always has a worthwhile, desirable result. And maybe there's a sensitivity analysis, but it doesn't end in bankruptcy. But if you look in real life, business plans end in bankruptcy every single day. So maybe it's not yours, maybe it's not mine, but it might be yours, it might be mine. So we should probably pressure test our assumptions a little bit. And everybody, the thing about an Excel is, I'm relatively good at Excel and I'm relatively good at assumptions, but every single deal I've ever performed has been wrong. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. But the Excel is only a snapshot of what you think will happen in the future, and it's never going to be exactly on. So then you guess, okay, is it going to be better or going to be worse? And sometimes there's things in your control, sometimes there's things that's not. I know I had infill plans that got delayed when COVID hit and we couldn't buy homes. Nothing I could really do about that. But I was wrong, and then wrong downward, as far as my infill plans on some of those parks. No, I was luckily you were able to increase rent more because we're in an inflationary environment, so we made up some ground. But there's that. So anyway, thanks for letting me respond.
I'd say also for anyone who's new and who's afraid, like, oh, this could happen, this could happen. Yeah, it probably will. There will probably be some bad things that happen. I'd say for me, I have faith in myself and my team and my ability to ask others in how to figure it out. There's gonna be things that come up that you couldn't plan for. So no amount of plan as much as you can, but also accept that it's not going to be 100% accurate and that you're going to have to figure stuff out. You're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to move with the deal.
Yeah, I think one thing that people with more experience add to their budget is contingency and or reserves. I know just me personally, there was no contingency in my first budget. There was no reserves in my first budget. I was looking at one the other day, and I had 15,000 in contingency, and I'm like, why did I only put 15,000 in that? But it was 15. It used to be zero. I should have had 25 contingency. And then obviously, if you have firm bids on stuff, you need less contingency. If I'm doing the road work in house, I probably need more contingency than if I got a fixed bid from the biggest asphalt company in that town, because then it's going to be right on pace with that bid, assuming I do it in a certain time frame.
God, yeah, I had a capital line from my bank for my first park, and it wasn't much, and it was went to nothing soon. I mean, it's not like it went to nothing, but we got all that money out because we needed. But yeah, I definitely had no contingencies, no capex, nothing. Like I said, I was putting stuff on my personal credit cards. Now I sleep better when I got money in the bank, and I'm not like, am I going to be able to pay my bills? It's not a fun place to be, but I was there. I figured it out.
Yeah, and one thing I remember, the construction guy told me this. I used to work at county government. We were building, it was the sports complex for the Chiefs and the Royals. The county owns the land and then leases them to the teams. And there was a major hundreds of millions of dollars renovation that was planned. And one of the estimators for the big construction company told me this. He said, the problem with any construction project is not a misprice, but a missed price.
Oh.
And I never thought about it like that. He's like, we know that you need a parking lot for the Chiefs Stadium. We're not going to be off by 30%. But if we don't know that there's a 30-foot, pipe below there for the, city water main, and we got to relocate it, missing that is going to be a price that's going to change the budget by millions of dollars. So you got to really do your diligence and have a lot of line items. My budget has, 25 standard line items, where it's like, see some of these OMs from brokers, and it's like taxes, insurance, management, general, administrative. And I'm like, there's 4 cost items. I'm like, does it snow there? Where's snowplow? Do you have grass there? Where's mowing? Just do that. Like, oh, that's in general. Okay. You have trees? Do you have blah, blah, blah. So the more detailed you can be, the more detailed you are, the less likely you're going to miss something.
Yeah. And the tax stays about the same, and you're like, this guy bought it at $500,000 and you're trying to sell it at $3 million. You think the taxes are going to stay the same?
See, I actually can say yes in none of those cases because I have a lot of tax appeal experience, but I'm more aggressive on uh, things like that with taxes than most because I've got expertise in that particular lane. But yeah, I agree that that's like, come on, and sometimes they'll disclose it like, oh, taxes are not adjusted at all, buyer to do their own diligence. And like, well, what state is it? What county is it? What's the reassessment cycle? Is it a sales verification state? What's the appeal process? Are there other parks in the county that I could use as discrimination examples? Do other professional owner operators own the county or not? Just put that in the hopper. But yeah, it's funny that the level of quality you get from different brokers. We have one broker in particular that we don't even respond to anymore because he wastes our time. He'll be, I got a great park. It's 80 pads, 60 full, and they want $2 million. I'm like, okay, what's the rent? I don't know. Go figure it out. Okay, and it's 60 full. Oh no, sorry, that was a different deal. This deal's got 30 full. I said 30 of 80. He goes, no, this is a 30 of 100. So there's 70 vacant. Well, unless you count the houses. There's houses included? Yeah, well, except in the RV section. Like, wait a second, is it an RV park? Well, the expansion ground is like, okay, dude, like you need to have like the basic like 10 or 12 data points. You're like literally in this business. You should know this. Go get those and then bring it to me. Maybe even a rent roll. I might ask you if the water is city water or private water. So you might want to get ready for that. And then I might ask you if it's included in rent or not. The type of questions that everyone else is asking you every single day and you haven't changed. So these brokers, some of these guys are just super lazy. When you get the good ones, they're like, here's 30 pieces of information. Here's a Dropbox file. Here's a video. Here's the construction bids on this. Here's a copy of the tax bill, the utility bills. They're like, all right, you're good. So I was thinking about it. I was at MHI's conference in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and I was curious to see how the attendance was this year. So I told Nate, who's my acquisitions guy who was with me, I said, I bet it's going to be down because it's a slow year for brokers and this is an expensive conference for them to come to. And I said, but it's going to be down even more next year. And you're going to see a lot of different faces because like this bad actor I just described, he's not going to be in the business next year. No. He's going to make a big zero. And I went to a dinner with one of the big brokerage houses and they only had half their people there. And it was because of production. And hey, look, company's not going to pay for you to go on a $4,000 weekend. Not that by that much, but we're not going to pay for all this if you haven't made any money for us this year. So,
yeah, I will say, good brokers are worth their weight in gold by far. I love working with good brokers. I'm not a direct to seller kind of person. I mean, I love talking to sellers, but I'm not like gonna go on the hunt. So I love working with good brokers in that they can do that and they can broker the deal. They can make it, oh, hey, this is where I'm looking at, and they can maybe temper the seller's expectations, or even like, okay, yeah, we can do your price, but we got to get a little creative. I love having that kind of in between, because I know that I want to make the deal work for everyone. But when I talk to sellers, and I can't blame them, sellers automatically think that I'm trying to screw them over. So it's like, okay, like I'm not, but maybe I'm not yet skilled enough to tell you like, or to let it be known, like I just want to make this deal work. And so, I was talking to a guy, an RV park guy, maybe a few months ago. And like the brokers gave me his number, it was I got their blessing to talk directly with the guy, and the broker's like, oh yeah, he really wants to sell. He's, his wife is angry at him. He's not spending time with her. Like he's doing fine. Like his thing, he likes building parks, but he doesn't like operations. So he wants to sell it. And, so I call him And I'm like, hey man, like, how can we kind of fix your problems? And he's like, oh, I don't have any problems, sort of attitude. Things are going really well here and I'm not going to sell for anything less. And it's just like met with that instant kind of hostility, might be a little bit hard of a term, but it's like maybe defensiveness. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe, I need to get the broker involved more and we need to have a three-way conversation. So it doesn't sound like I like tell me all the bad things about your park so I can try and get it for cheaper. No, that's not what I do. I want to know all the good and the bad so we can figure out how we can make this work. But I do love brokers. That's my shout out to all you good brokers out there.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, obviously, good brokers does have a lot of value. What's frustrating to me is when you got lazy. It's more just lazy brokers. It's like, come on. And then it really what frustrates me is when they waste my time. Like, I had one deal. I had it under LOI. It was 3 parks in Iowa, and they were like 60, 80, and 100. And they were occupied, I don't know, 50, 55, and 99. And we had agreed upon price, went back and forth on terms and price. I got it under LOI and I used my binding LOI. So I like legit have it tied up. Then I go drive the parks and I get there, and instead of being whatever, 60, 80, 100, they're like 40, 71, and 140. And the occupancy's all off. And I'm like, how can the broker be this bad? And it was a 4-hour drive. I had my dad drive from Illinois. We both drove 4 hours to get to these parks.
Dang.
But we were already there. So we did the DD, and we couldn't even tell at first the number of sites. So we go counting them, and we like, did we really miss the count by 9? We drive the other direction. We walk it. But we count independently. And we're like, this guy's data is wrong. But they were nice parks. So we liked them, and we had to revisit the price. So I get back and I tell the broker, hey, the data's off. We need to get the accurate data. And because also there were like 6 really nice homes with garages and like campers. Like the house was double wide, but then there was also an RV. There's like an $80,000 RV. I'm like, these are like the best tenants ever. He goes, oh yeah, those 6 on that street are individually parceled off, and he already sold them. By the way, you have to reseal the roads no less than every 4 years, or they can sue you. Like, okay. So anyway, I said we just need to revisit the price, get all the data in, but I'm very interested. And he gets back to me. He goes, the seller talked to his business partner, and he doesn't want to sell, and then they both have to agree. So never mind,
bro.
So I'm like, what? So now I have like significant time into this deal, and it's not for sale. And I have a contract that ties it up, but it was signed by a person that wasn't authorized. So it's not like I can even sue to enforce.
Yeah.
I can't enforce. So like that really frustrated me. Right. And that broker sends me more deals, and they're like a 2 cap. And I'm like, just quit sending these to me.
Stop, bro.
Yeah. So anywho. All right, Tim, what any other tips or tricks before we go?
Let's see, tips or tricks. Let's see. I already said the taking action thing. I mean, stay away from lagoons and wastewater treatment plants, right? But everyone knows that. I'm actually working on an RV park with a surprise lagoon. And we'll see, bro. We'll see. If it was just the lagoon, we'd figure it out, but there's a couple other things that are off. So we'll see. It's not a hard no, but it's a weird surprise because it's usually a hard no, I mean, just accept that you're not going to know everything. Anyone who's new, who wants to get into it, like hook up with someone who's done it already. And accept that there's going to be differences in what you think it's going to be. And that's okay, because that's life, isn't it?
Yeah. No, good. I mean, obviously it's considerably easier today to be in the know because of the internet and podcasts. I mean, I remember when I was a financial analyst in 2008, there was nothing online about internal rate of return and really understanding the metrics and all the details in that. I knew the formula in Excel, right? Everybody did, equals IRR, open parent, select data, close parent, enter. Okay, great, but I didn't really understand the return on and return of investment and the cash inlays and outlays and timing of such. I didn't understand what a monthly versus an annual was doing. So I had to research it.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to research. Well, now, I mean, I just covered more in the last 30 seconds on that than was available on the internet 15 years ago when I tried to learn it. And if you look at MH, when I started learning it, all that was available was Frank and Dave's CDs.
Yeah.
And I think they had the boot camp also, but I learned about the CDs, and now, I mean, look at all the podcasts. Obviously, I'm biased, mine included, but just my podcast alone has provided more free information for people to get smart on MH than existed when I started. Like, you could not find it, right? So for people coming in today, you have more competition than I did because of this. But as far as like not you've started several years ago, but somebody that starts tomorrow does not have the same level of excuse that I could have had, 10 years ago. So it's a matter of just put in the effort, take that action as you mentioned, but put in the effort, and then network, etc. Hire experts, find partners on the things that you don't know. I mean, I know enough about a wastewater treatment plant to be dangerous, but I'm not going to base my evaluation on my own opinion. I'm going to go hire an expert. And I killed the deal. Phil Merrill, who's been on here, he was the podcast. He came to Iowa with me and tested this treatment plant in Lagoon and found out it was insufficient in size and it didn't have a proper permit. So the whole thing, and then unfortunately, part of the reason he found that out is he had to talk to the state. So then guess what? The seller called, we dropped the deal. The seller calls pissed. You turned me into the state. Like, no, we didn't turn you into the state. We inquired with the state to verify that your permit was legitimate, and it's not. So yes, the state is now aware that you are running a lagoon and treatment plant that is not approved. So you think, well, they're coming on Wednesday, 2 days from now, to red tag us. I was like, well, sorry, not sorry. I had to know.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's certain level of resources you can do yourself and you can get smart on, but then you gotta call in the pro occasionally. So anyway, I agree. It takes time. Tony Robbins says, "Can I?" That I like continuous and never-ending improvement. And if you're not climbing up that mountain, clawing every inch, you're gonna fall down. There's no plateau. You keep getting smarter, or you're gonna just get dumber. Because the industry is going to change, the times are going to change, and you're going to be back, using a flip phone and MS DOS instead of today's, new widgets.
Yeah. No AI, going back to MS DOS, indeed. Yeah, it is. You definitely got to change with the times, and I hear a lot of people complain about interest rates and like, oh, all on market deals, like there's no deals to be had. And it's like, bro, you got to make the deals. You don't, in my experience, I don't find deals, I make deals. I see what's there, I see how it can work, and I put the offer out. And I hear so many no's and so many, like, yeah, I was talking to a broker yesterday, and I'm got to relook at this deal because he's like, yeah, it's selling for like 3.5 million. It's whatever, 100 sites, 50 are occupied, and lot rents 250. We'll say rough numbers, right? And I'm like, bro, like off the top of my head, I can already see it's going to be way, way, way lower unless they get creative with me. And so, I'll put an offer out and I'll have reason, like, for my numbers. This is, again, I don't negative cash flow. So this is why I have to give you this offer. I'll still put the offer out, even though he said they're not looking to carry any paper. They're not looking, no one ever wants to finance until you make the offer. What I do, here's cash, all cash at close. Here's seller carrying an equity position. Here's, owner finance with 10% down. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. Like, I hear no all the time. That's fine. But this is what can reasonably work. This deal's been on the market for a while, so who knows? Maybe it'll work. Maybe they'll tell me to kick rocks. But either way, I'm not like waiting for deals to come to me. I'm talking to brokers. I'm looking on Crexy. I'm looking on Mobile Home Park Store. I'm looking to see what's there. I'm making the offers and then I'm following up. So it's don't overcomplicate it. How about that for people who are new? Just don't overcomplicate it.
All right, good stuff, Tim. Hey, where can people find you if they want to reach out after this episode?
Instagram, tim.woodbridge, Facebook, tim.woodbridge 54-ish, maybe. I don't know. I keep my life simple. I mean, I got all the same Facebook from forever ago. LinkedIn, I don't even know what I am on LinkedIn, but like, y'all, if you want to talk a little bit more, I love helping people out. So like calendly.com/Woodbridge Capital, let's have a conversation. Reach out to me. I have made a really quick little MHP basics video on Loom, just because everyone was like, tell me more about mobile home parks. I was like, why don't I just make this basic Loom video and send it to people? And I really want to help people. I really enjoy helping. I really enjoy working with other people and having them understand this interesting asset class. So I'm always down for a conversation.
Tim, sounds good. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, appreciate it, man.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.